If you search for Jupiter in modern astrology, you'll likely find it described as a benevolent planet of luck, a sort of cosmic Santa Claus handing out unearned good fortune and easy success. Strip away that modern gloss, and you find a far more demanding engine. In this system, Jupiter represents the unyielding and neutral principle of expansion, the raw force that pushes boundaries outward. This expansion carries a necessary duality. We require growth to escape stagnation, yet biological and psychological systems alike show us that growth without a regulating mechanism rapidly becomes destructive. Working with this archetype requires mastering the precise, dangerous tipping point where necessary growth threatens to spill over into fatal excess. Entering new territory, whether professional, intellectual, or spiritual, leaves the psyche in a state of disorientation. To navigate this unfamiliar space and make sense of its new rules, the mind begins constructing a framework of belief to organize the chaos. The 12-year orbital cycle of Jupiter serves as an archetypal map for this psychological evolution. It tracks the life cycle of our convictions from their inception to their eventual decline. By observing this celestial timeline, we can trace the exact trajectory of a belief. We see how a concept is born, the pressure required to codify it into law, and the moment it inevitably inflates into dangerous dogma. Tracking this path through the astrological wheel pulls esoteric psychology out of the abstract. We gain a sequential chronological record of cause and effect, mapping the standard human response to growth over time. To survive your own success and harness genuine opportunity, you have to understand the geometry of this 12-year expansion cycle. The cycle begins at a point of conjunction. This is the inception phase, the moment a new seed of personal opportunity takes root in the psyche. The sudden surge of optimism and faith that follows acts as a psychological engine. These feelings provide the drive necessary to step out and seize new territory. Notice the glowing triangle forming within this 12-sign checkpoint wheel. This early, frictionless phase of growth naturally attracts supportive circumstances. In astrological language, this harmonic trine geometry visually translates a worldview taking root, expanding easily without meaningful opposition. What we commonly mistake for pure luck is actually the result of this unobstructed geometric momentum, driving a newly expanding belief system forward. Eventually, rapid expansion collides with the friction of the real world. Unobstructed momentum hits its first major resistance. This initiates the archetype of law under Jupiter. Once you expand into a new domain, whether it is a new business, a relationship, or a philosophy, you are forced to create rules to govern it. Here, the geometry shifts into a rigid 90-degree angle. This represents intense structural tension, where fluid faith solidifies into structured doctrine. This square aspect visualizes the massive pressure required to establish boundaries around a belief growing too fast to support its own weight. Compared to the initial ease of the trine, this period feels like a bitter struggle or a severe test of your core convictions. This friction serves a structural purpose. Without external pressure forcing a clear definition of terms, the belief system would simply dissipate into the void. The climax of the 12-year cycle arrives once the archetype of expansion has successfully overcome its early obstacles. It has built its structures and secured its territory, leaving it with no natural predator to keep it in check. This environment triggers worldview inflation. The original confidence required to build the system calcifies and mutates into hubris. Look at this line of tension cutting the astrological wheel perfectly in half. This polarity illustrates a philosophy devolving into dogmatic zealotry. This opposition geometry represents the breaking point of excess, a system stretched to its maximum limit, holding immense tension without any flexibility. The real-world consequences of this phase are highly visible. We see it in mass societal overreach, massive economic bubbles, and geopolitical conflicts driven entirely by ideological supremacy. The peak of Jupiter's expansion leaves the system in a state of maximum vulnerability, exposed to the fatal weight of its own inflated dogma. Extreme worldview inflation eventually summons a structural stress test. The environment pushes back, violently culling the excess that can no longer sustain itself. The Jupiter cycle functions to establish the practical limits of our wisdom, preventing the exhaustion of resources through infinite, aimless growth. As fragmented aspect lines resolve into a cohesive celestial map, they highlight the cycle's ultimate question. Can you hold the vision of expansion without it consuming you? Here, astrology operates as a precise geometry of meaning, mapping the pressures that shape human behavior. True opportunity requires more than claiming new ground. It demands forging a philosophical framework capable of sustaining growth while keeping the center intact.